Talk, music, get it all
24 hours
on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar.
WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar, 7 p.m. in Lagos. Good evening and thank you for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and worldwide at wadr.org. Let's begin with our major stories. Ghana postpones the evacuations of its citizens in South Africa amid xenophobic attacks. Nigeria deepens digital reforms at public institutions nationwide to enhance tech-driven service delivery.
We welcome investors and partners to participate in Nigeria's digital infrastructure ecosystem.
Senegal holds consultations for national dialogue on key national issues in the country. An appeals trial of Chadian opposition leader Success Masra comments on the tight security protocol. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
On the news, this is Sankulu Real Jungle.
Thank you for joining our broadcast. We begin in Ghana, where the government has postponed the planned evacuation of more than 800 Ghanaian nationals from South Africa following renewed xenophobic attacks in that country. The evacuation had initially been scheduled for today, May 21, 2026. However, Ghana's Ministry of Foreign Affairs says operational and legal procedures in South Africa have delayed the process. Abdullah Hassan explains the details.
Ghana's Ministry of Foreign Affairs says the postponement is linked to mandatory passenger screening, coordination among agencies, and securing of flight authorizations required by South African authorities. More than 800 Ghanaians have reportedly registered with Ghana's High Commission in Pretoria for repatriation following the latest wave of anti-foreigner violence. Meanwhile, Ghanaian Foreign Minister Samuel Ablakwa has formally appealed to the African Union (AU) to discuss the xenophobic attacks as an urgent continental matter during the AU Media Coordination meeting scheduled for late June in Egypt. The Ghanaian government had earlier summoned South Africa's acting High Commissioner in Accra to express its concerns over the attacks. Ghana's High Commissioner to South Africa, Benjamin Anani Kwashi, says South African authorities are taking steps to prevent further violence, although he admits the situation has not yet fully stabilized. The Foreign Ministry has assured citizens that every effort is being made to guarantee the safe return of all affected Ghanaians.
Abdullah Hassan with that report. Now, in Chad, the appeal trial of opposition leader and former Prime Minister Success Masra comments on the tight security at the Supreme Court in N'Djamena. Security forces, including members of the Nomadic Guard, National Gendarmerie, and the riot police, were heavily deployed around the court premises on Wednesday as authorities restricted access to the hearing. The journalists and representatives of human rights organizations were barred from attending the proceedings. Only judges, lawyers for the defense, representatives of the prosecution, and the state were allowed inside the courtroom. Usman Omar completes the story.
One of the major developments of the opening day was the absence of Success Masra himself. No official explanation was given by either his legal team or his entourage, raising questions among supporters and observers. Masra, leader of the Transformers Party, was sentenced in August 2025 to 20 years in prison on charges including murder, complicity, dissemination of hate messages through electronic means, and criminal association linked to the Mandakau killings. Since his conviction, he has been detained at the Judicial Police Coordination Facility in the Chadian capital. His political party and several human rights organizations continue to denounce the case as politically motivated and are demanding his immediate release. Defense lawyers have also repeatedly requested a medical evacuation for the opposition figure, citing serious respiratory health problems. Authorities have so far rejected those requests. The outcome of the appeal now rests with Chad's Supreme Court as hearings continue behind closed doors.
Osman Omar with that report. Here in Senegal, consultations for national dialogue got underway today in the capital, Dakar. Leading the first of talks are former prime ministers and former finance ministers of the Republic. Initially planned as a broad national gathering bringing together political parties, civil society and social actors, the format has now been reshaped because of the approaching Tabaski celebrations, a period of intense religious and family activity across the country. Francis Boniface has more in this report.
The major dialogue session, earlier scheduled for May 28, will no longer be held in its traditional form. Instead, authorities have opted for targeted consultations and smaller meetings running from today, May 21, to Sunday, May 31, 2026. According to the presidency, President Bassirou Diomaye Faye is prioritizing more direct exchanges with political stakeholders, civil society representatives, and religious leaders, while taking into account the social realities surrounding Tabaski. But despite the revised format, officials insist the objective remains the same: to sustain discussions on national priorities such as governance reforms, political stability, and social cohesion. However, the consultations are already facing resistance. The Alliance for the Republic, the party of former President Macky Sall, alongside the opposition coalition Front for the Defense of the Republic, has announced a boycott of the process. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko and members of his government are expected before the National Assembly tomorrow, Friday, for another question and answer session with lawmakers on current national issues.
Francis Boniface reporting there.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Let's focus on Benin, where outgoing President Patrice Talon bids farewell just days before handing over power to Ramol Wadani. His finance minister was elected last April with 94% of the vote. After 10 years at the helm of Benin, Patrice Talon will step down on Sunday, May 24, the date of Ramol Wadani's inauguration. Veronica Chai reports.
While presiding over his final cabinet meeting on Wednesday, Patrice Talon thanked his colleagues for their support during his 10 years in office. In a post on social media on Thursday, he bid farewell to the Beninese people. Meanwhile, government spokesperson Wilfred Liand Humbeji gave a positive assessment of President Patrice Talon's 10 years in office, highlighting numerous political and social reforms. According to him, these reforms have enabled the country to make progress at all fronts. However, the opposition has regularly challenged the reforms. Wilfred also addressed the possibility of a presidential pardon for several political figures recently in prison.
There are political figures who are in prison for various offenses, and that doesn't make them political prisoners. With that clarification, a lot can happen in 96 hours, including things you don't expect, and perhaps even things you do expect may not happen.
The government spokesperson also commented on recent developments in the country, notably the dismissal of 169 employees from the public broadcasting company SRTB.
From a human perspective, I think it's deplorable. They could have been warned beforehand, prepared, including those not directly involved, so that everyone would know it could happen at any time. That being said, even if it's undesirable, it's part of the life of any company. It can happen sooner or later for various reasons.
After 10 years at the helm of Benin, Patrice Talon will hand over power this Sunday to his finance minister, Romuald Wadani. Wadani was elected president of the Republic on April 12, winning 94% of the vote.
Very Jai with those details. All still in Benin, thousands of children are expected to benefit from a nutrition program backed by the Child Nutrition Fund. Funded by UNICEF, the scheme has an envelope of $50 million and aims to combat child malnutrition in the country. The announcement was made during a visit to Benin by Roland Kupka, Director of Child Nutrition Fund. During his stay, he met with Alain Hinkati, Director General of the National Food and Nutrition Agency, also known as ANAN. Christopher Atichi reports.
According to UNICEF Benin, the funding includes more than $12 million in strategic financing alongside an additional $38 million to support government investment in essential nutrition supplies. However, officials did not specify when the funds will be disbursed. The financing is part of a multi-year partnership between the Child Nutrition Fund and the Government of Benin, targeting the first 1,000 days of a child's life, a critical period for brain development, growth and long-term health. The program will support the distribution of macronutrient-rich supplements for young children, vitamin A supplementation, and treatment for acute malnutrition. Authorities also plan to establish the First Foods Africa initiative, aimed at increasing access to affordable, nutritious and locally produced foods for children between 6 and 23 months old. Speaking during the visit, Roland Kupka praised Benin's commitment to child nutrition. Despite the progress, Benin continues to face major nutrition challenges. Data from the 2021-2022 National Mix Survey shows that more than one-third of children under 5 suffer from stunted growth. UNICEF also reports that malnutrition contributes to 45% of deaths among children under 5 in the country. Health officials say anemia remains widespread, affecting more than 70% of children aged 6 and 59 months and nearly 60% of pregnant women. Northern Benin's Alibori department remains the hardest hit region, with thousands of severe acute malnutrition cases recorded in recent years.
Christopher Atichu reporting. Meanwhile, in Guinea, the electoral campaign is gradually intensifying across the country ahead of legislative and municipal elections scheduled for May 31, 2026. With just days left before the polls, candidates from the presidential coalition, independents and parts of the opposition are making numerous promises regarding youth employment, sanitation and local development. However, this election is taking place in a unique context marked by the absence of the main opposition parties, some of which have been suspended by the administration. In contrast, others have chosen to boycott the elections. Well, Imo Edet has more in this report by our Conakry correspondent, Cherno Alpha Ibrahim Balde.
In Matam, the electoral campaign is gradually gaining momentum, even though popular enthusiasm remains limited in several neighborhoods. Between posters, caravans, and meetings with citizens, candidates are continuing their efforts to persuade voters. Dr. Hassan Ba, the presidential coalition's candidate in the legislative election, says he places health and education for all at the heart of his platform.
Today, thanks to this universal health coverage, our parents will be able to benefit from quality care throughout the country.
However, Sinkun Kaba, an independent candidate in the municipal elections in the Matam district, promises local governance, focus on transparency, sanitation, and improving the living conditions of the population.
You know, in Karires, we have a problem with water supply. In Hamakonan, there is no basic infrastructure. So we came to present our vision, our program, this responsible governance that we intend to implement to provide useful infrastructure to these communities and once again to strengthen their capacity.
Despite these various promises, some citizens remain skeptical of the candidates' speeches. In Dixon, Sori Dumbuya says he is not convinced by the projects presented during this campaign.
This isn't an election campaign, it's propaganda. ZMD is sponsoring all the candidates, and these are candidates unknown to the Guinean people. We don't see any debate on television. We don't see any debate on social media. Debate is completely absent. We haven't seen any serious candidates. We haven't seen any candidates chosen by the people of Guinea. That's deplorable.
The double legislative and municipal election scheduled for May 31, 2026 is taking place without the participation of the main opposition parties. Some parties were suspended by the ruling administration, while others have decided to boycott the electoral process for various reasons.
A report from Conakry correspondent Cherno Alpha Ibrahim Balde, voiced by Imo Edet. Elsewhere in Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has directed ministries, departments, and agencies to deepen digital reforms and embrace the technology-driven public service systems. The directive was given at the opening of the 2026 International Civil Service Conference in Abuja. The mandate comes as West African countries face increasing pressure to modernize governance, improve transparency, and reduce bureaucratic bottlenecks. Abuja correspondent Yechenu Sasset reports.
The conference brought together policymakers, development partners, and public sector leaders to discuss reforms, innovation, and the future of governance in Africa. Representing President Tinubu, Secretary to the Government of the Federation, George Akume, said digital reforms are necessary to strengthen accountability, efficiency, and citizens' trust in government institutions.
As we accelerate our digital transformation journey, we welcome investors and partners to participate in Nigeria's digital infrastructure ecosystem. The era of manual inefficiency must give way to a culture of speed, transparency, data-driven decision-making, and citizen-centered service.
Head of the Civil Service of the Federation, D.D. Esther Wilson-Jack, also stressed the importance of innovation and institutional reforms in building resilient public systems capable of meeting modern governance demands.
Our service-wise GPT platform, an AI tool that helps civil servants navigate service rules and institutional knowledge, has recorded over 50,000 conversations.
Meanwhile, British High Commissioner to Nigeria, Richard Montgomery, said digital transformation within public institutions is critical not only for Nigeria, but for countries across West Africa seeking to improve governance, transparency, and economic competitiveness.
And reforms of the economy, of the civil service, of any country take time. They need sustained attention. They need the energy that you are injecting, madam. Also, some impressive resilience to present global challenges.
The discussions come at a time when many West African countries are facing increasing pressure to modernize government operations, reduce bureaucratic bottlenecks, and improve service delivery through technology. For WADR, Yechenu Sasitu in Abuja.
You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio on 94.9 FM, online at wadr.org, and on YouTube and Facebook. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Ghana postpones the evacuation of its citizens in South Africa amid xenophobic attacks. Nigeria deepens digital reforms at public institutions nationwide to enhance tech-driven service delivery. Senegal holds consultations for a national dialogue on key national issues in the country. An appeal trial of Chadian opposition leader Success Masra commences on the tight security protocol in the capital, N'Djamena. Still ahead in the news, we have guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Liberian President Joseph Boakai has submitted two major justice and governance bills to national legislature. The proposed laws seek to establish the War and Economic Crimes Court, as well as specialized National Anti-Corruption Court. President Boakai says the move is in line with Liberia's constitution and the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and commitments under the 2003 Accra Peace Agreement. The War and Economic Crimes Court would prosecute allegations linked to war crimes, human rights abuses, and economic crimes committed during Liberia's civil conflicts. Meanwhile, the Anti-Corruption Court is aimed at strengthening efforts to tackle corruption and misuse of public resources. We cross over to neighboring Sierra Leone, where the government received the first batch of African nationals deported from the United States. 9 deportees arrived at the Freetown International Airport on Wednesday, fewer than the 25 individuals initially expected in the first group. Sierra Leone becomes the second West African nation after Ghana to accept African nationals deported under a new deportation agreements with the U.S. The development has sparked debate within the country, with civil society groups and human rights activists raising concerns over the government's decision. Augustine Koli tells us more.
The Sierra Leonean government says the agreement to receive deportees was not a political trade-off, but a humanitarian decision aimed at supporting ECOWAS citizens being held in detention in the United States. Foreign Affairs Minister Timothy Musa Kaba explains that the country's involvement reflects what the government sees as both a moral responsibility and a commitment to international law.
This particular agreement is not a direct quid pro quo. It is, in a way, considering the constraint of an important bilateral partner and the need on we own part as well for play we own role in the safety of ECOWAS citizens who could be kept in detention in the United States because they may not have the fiat or the diplomatic go-ahead for taking people here, going into the countries of origin. They will be in detention. If we provide a quick reaction on a transitory basis, I think that under international law is an obligation that is performed with a high sense of morality.
However, human rights organizations in the country accuse the government of not holding consultations with citizens regarding the decision to accept deportees from the United States. Some are raising questions about what benefits the country stands to gain from the agreement, including the identities and criminal records of the deportees. This development comes amid growing cooperation between the United States and some African governments on migration and deportation issues. Earlier this year, Ghana became the first country in West Africa to accept more than 30 deported foreign nationals from the United States after signing a similar agreement. The move is already raising wider concerns across the region about migration policy, regional solidarity, and the responsibility of West African states towards displaced or detained African nationals abroad.
Augustine Coley reporting. Now, in the Gambia, the 87th Ordinary Public Session of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights concludes in the capital, Banjul. It follows 10 days of high-level deliberation aimed at reinforcing the protection of human rights across the continent. Held from May 11th to the 20th, the event marked the 45th anniversary of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
As we reported in our news broadcast on Wednesday, the Senegalese Truckers Unions is urging drivers to temporarily avoid traveling to Mali over growing security concerns along the Dakar-Bamako corridor. The armed group JNIM, which operates in Mali, has intensified attacks on freight trucks heading to Bamako since late April, with several Senegalese trucks reportedly burnt in recent weeks. The union is also appealing to Senegalese authorities to assist drivers currently stranded in Mali, many of whom are too afraid to make the return journey to Dakar. To discuss the situation, WDR spoke with Gora Kuma, Secretary General of the Senegalese Truckers Union.
The reason I made this statement is because our trucks are being burned. Those carrying out the attacks are not sparing Malian trucks or trucks from other countries. That is why I'm saying that those already on Malian territory should stay where they are and avoid moving around. Senegalese drivers should remain where they are until the situation becomes clearer. If they have the possibility of returning to Senegal, they should do so. But Senegalese drivers should not decide to continue going to Bamako because the risk remains permanent. Those still in Senegal should also avoid traveling to Mali until the situation improves. It is purely a security measure.
Well, you say the risk is permanent. What exactly is the risk?
How many Malian vehicles have they burned? Passenger buses, heavy trucks, fuel tankers. 11 Senegalese trucks have been burned since the attack near Kati. Today, they burn trucks. Tomorrow, they may kill people. That is the danger. Senegal is not specifically being targeted, but there is no guarantee. They are destroying our equipment now, but tomorrow it could become something worse. That is why I say insecurity is real. As a precaution, our compatriots should remain where they are. We do not know who is carrying out these attacks. They do not announce themselves or give warnings. So, people must stay where they are for their own safety.
Are you worried that some Senegalese transport workers may ignore your call?
Of course, some may not listen, but if they ignore the warning, they will face the consequences themselves. I have already called on everyone not to travel. Those who refuse to listen will probably be very few. And if they later face problems, I cannot blame anyone except them.
What impact could this have on Mali, considering that most of the country's imported goods pass through the port of Dakar?
Our wish is for peace to return so that we can continue supplying Mali. If Mali faces difficulties, Senegal will also feel the impact. If trucks stop moving, the port could also face problems. The transport sector will suffer financial losses as well. Since the attacks began, transport activity has slowed significantly because Senegalese drivers are afraid. And if activity slows, our economy also suffers. This affects both us and the state. We want peace to return so we can continue supplying Mali, not only for Mali's benefit, but also for our own interests. Mali is an important source of business for the transport sector.
You're asking Senegalese drivers to wait until the situation becomes calm. In your opinion, what needs to happen for the Dakar-Bamako route to become safe again?
I honestly do not know. Maybe there needs to be a dialogue or negotiations. I am not a politician, but conflict usually ends around the negotiation table. Both sides need to discuss so that peace can return to Mali, because endless conflict makes no sense. We pray for peace to return because it is in the interest of both Senegalese and Malians.
What role do you think the Senegalese government can play alongside the Malian government to help resolve the situation?
What I would ask from Senegalese government first is to help the Senegalese drivers stranded in Mali who have lost everything. Right now, we are collecting money among ourselves to help them buy rice and survive. The government should step in to support those Senegalese citizens because they no longer have anything left. For the rest, discussions between the two governments may eventually help address the situation.
Gora Kuma is the Secretary General of the Senegalese Truckers Union. Well, in sports, Senegal have unveiled a 28-man provisional squad for the 2026 FIFA World Cup, with head coach Pape Thiaw recalling star forward Sadio Mane alongside captain Kalidou Koulibaly. The squad combines experienced names such as Edouard Mendy and Idrissa Gana Gueye, with emerging talents including Ibrahim Mbaye. The final list will be reduced to 26 players ahead of Senegal's Group I opener against France on June 16. Meanwhile, Egypt captain Mohamed Salah has been named in the country's provisional squad for the 2026 FIFA World Cup alongside Omar Mamouche and Mahmoud Hassan Trezeguet. And outside Africa and Europe, Aston Villa ended a 30-year wait for major silverware after beating SC Freiburg 3-0 to win the Europa League in Istanbul yesterday night. Goals from Yuri Tillemans, Emi Buendia and Morgan Rogers sealed Villa's first major European title since 1982. Manager Unai Emery claimed his fifth Europa League crown as Villa completed a remarkable rise from relegation contenders to European champions. We've come to the end of this edition of Newslink in West Africa, the Macrash Radio Broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Ismail Kamara and Maudou Ju for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via our social media platforms X, Instagram, and Facebook at WADR English. I am Sankula Jibril Janko. Good evening.
We thank you for listening to Newslink in Nigeria on Love FM Abuja and Darling FM Owerri. In the Gambia on Hot FM Banjul, Hilltop FM and Veritas Radio in Serekunda. Thank you for listening on Alternative Youth Radio Lofa County, Liberia, Radio Kegaman in Nimba County, and DCN Radio Riverses County. A big thank you to Radio Baft FM in Sierra Leone for listening, and in Ghana we thank Radio Pad in Damango and Royals FM in Wenchi. Thank you all for listening to Newslink.